when we have a challenge, a persistent challenge in our life, we usually have a story or a narrative or a loop around it, all right? And it gets stored in that subconscious part of the brain, or the mind. It's in our subconscious mind, but the part where it's stored is in the amygdala, and it creates this, the fight or flight nervous system is activated when we think about it because we want to avoid it. So the problem is here in our subconscious mind. Here's our stream of consciousness. Anytime we think of it, we're like, that thing that I haven't figured out yet. I need to avoid. I need to go and scroll on TikTok.
Yeah.
Or, that thing I haven't avoided. I need to go and drink some alcohol or gamble or do this thing. So there's this avoidant kind of like in an animal nature where it's trying to run away from that thought, belief, idea, whatever it is. And so by actually first identifying that challenge, then asking, what is the benefit of this? It's now coming from the subconscious mind, and we're starting to bring it towards the conscious mind, and we're starting to focus on not only the problem, but we're focusing on the solution by asking, what is the benefit? And it creates more blood, energy, and glucose to the forefront of the brain, the creative center of the brain. And we're starting to see that problem in creative ways and creative insights start to come to us. And intuition starts to be revealed to us.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the High Performance Management Podcast, episode 16. Today I'm here with Brett, international coach, mindset, spiritual leader, soul searcher. I love what he's doing at the moment. We're going to dive super deep into some quantum mechanics, hopefully, spirituality, finding your purpose, what it means to have a purpose, following that, being intuitive. I really appreciate you coming on today, man. How's things?
Thanks for the invite, Corey. I'm really excited to jump in.
This is great. So, like I was saying just before we hopped on here, you've changed paths slightly. You're now packing your bags. You go embark on a journey around the world for a little while or a long while, who knows? Enlighten us on that. So what is it that you're doing at the moment? What's allowed you to get to this point where you're able to travel the world?
Wow, it's a big question. It's been many trials and tribulations and a lot of learning to trust the path that unfolds before us, a lot of stepping out into the edge and choosing courage over fear, a lot of, listening to your own heart, your own wisdom, your own guidance, as opposed to the voices on the outside.
Yeah.
So there's two different things. Obviously, there's what happens in the internal world, and then there's what happens in what we do and how we show up in the physical world. And so, there's many ways we could look at it. So what's allowed me to get to this place really to be able to go out there and see the world and travel and be of service and guide people is ultimately following what I feel to be my purpose is. And one of the things that awoken me to this was that for such a long time, that was something that I perceived as missing in my life. And so there's a field of a study called axiology, and it talks about human value systems, and where our values truly come from is what we perceive as missing or what we perceive as voids. So there's this conversation around values right now, especially in the personal development space, where they talk about, what's your values? And people just say words like honesty and be good. And it's these like vague, broad umbrella terms, but they don't actually get really specific on what it is that makes you unique. And so there's a difference between social expectations and ideologies, right? And then there's a difference between that as being called values and then what it is that's truly unique to you. And whatever you perceive as most missing in your life is what you have a higher value to fulfill. And every human being has their own specific set of values. That's specific to them as their DNA, the retinal pattern. And this, when I first heard this from an educator named Dr. John D. Martini, I became very intrigued because I was like, okay, there's something here that's been guiding all these choices and decisions and all these things that I've been doing this whole time, but I'm comparing my actions and my choices based upon what the world's told me, as opposed to being really clear on what it is that's driving that at a deep, unconscious level. And this is what we could call, a biological imperative, if we look into the world of biology. And it's like I said, it's unique to every single human being and individual, to every single one of us. And when we get caught up in trying to tell others how they should be, or trying to pretend to be someone we're not, this is what creates the suffering in our life, I believe. And we have a world where so many people are told what to do and how to do it. They get lost in what they think they should do and what their true calling is, and they get confused because we haven't been taught to listen to this inner voice, this intuition, this inner guidance. And so something that I take, the first thing that I do with my clients is I actually start to get them to become self-reflective and go inward and introspective by asking them questions that is no right or wrong answer. It's actually asking questions of their own intuition, of their own and studying their own life. It's called the study of ontologies, where you study your own being, your own experiences, and learning from life itself. Like, I'm not here to be like, hey, here's some more information to learn and add to the already growing, bucket of information you keep adding in from, TikToks and YouTubes and all this. It's about removing all the noise. It's the first step, I believe, in terms of living a fulfilling life and really living what's true to our purpose and our path. And the world lost its purpose. So for me, for 7 or 8 years, I got caught up trying to find my purpose and didn't know what it was or how it looked. And I got lost up with the fairies for a bit, meditating on my navel for a few hours a day, trying to find it and figure it out. Hundreds of hours of meditation, reading, and doing all the healing modalities I could find, and trying to figure this thing out. And it just dawned on me one day, like, the most prominent thing that was most potent to me was this word purpose. And I just truly believe that if that was the main conversation in our world today, as humanity, what's our purpose? What's our individual purpose is what's going to allow us to get clear on what our collective purpose is. And I truly believe that that's what we're all here to do, is when we're living at our highest expression, right, and we're tapped in and we're tuned into why we showed up, we're living on purpose. It's something that's already inherent within us. And we're always on purpose, but it's diluted, but based upon how much we're listening to our inner voice and the voice of creation, and how much weight we're giving to the outside noise. And if we're giving weight to the outside noise, it's like this distorted message coming through, and we're kind of living this dimly lit flame of potential, that could be. And when we listen to our purpose and our true calling, it's like we're pouring gasoline on that flame, and it's like, and then people come to gather around, the flame, the fire, and they want to be part of what you're doing, what you're here for. These are the people we look up to. They're shining like stars, It's like, that's why we call them stars, even though I believe that's all mind programming as well. But because what true star is sharing, incredible wisdom. There's very few, but it's like, moths are drawn towards the flame. And so the more you're inspired, the more you're listening within, the more people want to be around you, the more people want to know what you're up to, know how it works, that's where you become a leader, and you start to show other people and shine that light for them as well, who are walking through the dark.
I think that brings up a really good question or line of questioning. How do we differentiate what we think's our purpose? Because like you said, it's quite easy to get distracted in this world. Hyperpalatable foods, dopamine addicted, everything's calling for our attention and programming us, like you're saying, to like what your true calling is. What's that beginning step? I know you said, asking those questions, but you got to first know that, like, what if you think you're doing your purpose?
Oh, got you. Okay. So there's a few ways to do it, but the way that the simple way I'd like to share is, like, there's a part of the brain called the telencephalon. And anytime we do anything that's aligned with our true purpose of why we're here, that part of the brain activates and we have the most retention, intention, and attention. So if you go over, say, your notes, if you're an avid studier and you learn and you take notes, like whether it's on your phone, whether it's on going through those notes and looking at like, why did I take this piece of information down? Why did I write this specific note down? It's because there's something that's missing in your life and in your mind, and you want to fill that gap. And that's what the word fulfillment means, is to fill the void, fill what's missing, right? And so by going over things you've written down, that's obviously something that's resonated for you. And that's where you can find, those nuggets, and there's a thread, there'll be a theme. So whatever information you've retained as well. So if you've read a book and you remember a specific quote or a specific chapter, like that is obviously connected to your purpose. Anything like any memory that is you have a strong recall on, whether it's good or bad, is actually connected to your purpose. And if it's something negative, typically it's because it's something we haven't got the lesson and the blessing on yet, and that's why it's still kind of hanging around in the background. And it's like it's there for us to become the full perspective, to see both sides. That it wasn't only this, it was also giving us all these other things. So a perfect example of this was growing up. I grew up in a home that was, like most people, as you can say, it was a bit of a broken home, a bit of a dysfunctional family. There was, some bad. It's not. I wouldn't say I could perceive as a young kid. It was bad. But then I look at it now after doing this work and after working on myself and like seeing like I had the best upbringing ever, because of the fact that everything I perceived as missing is what gave me the drive to go and get as I got older. So, lack of communication was one thing. There was also there was a lot of anger and all this kind of stuff growing up in the home. Like I seen domestic violence. So it was like, if you don't work on your shit and you don't actually work on yourself and your triggers and your emotions and your buried trauma, you could say, then this is how you show up and this is how you react in the world. And so it gave me this drive. It was the seed for me the seeds that were planted to me to go and seek, the answers of life in this personal growth journey, and to be able to be a better communicator and to express myself in an articulate way that people would understand and that I could understand other people as well. And it's completely changed the way I communicate with the ones that I love and care about. And so coming back to our memories and what we perceive, so it's like it creates this beautiful story now. It's like, for me, it's like, I was meant to experience that coming into this world because it gave me all that I required on my path of evolution. And so people sometimes get caught up in like trying to avoid or bury, I've got to forget the past, let go, you can't do anything about it, you can't change the past. But you can actually change your perception to add it as fuel for you to go and fulfill your purpose, or it becomes weight and it becomes emotional baggage. So to answer your question, that's one perspective, is like looking at the things you retain, the information you've retained, and looking at the kind of common thread. And it was like I think it was a Steve Jobs quote. It's like, you can tell the future by connecting the dots to the past, or you can see clarity of the future better by connecting the dots to the past.
You know what's crazy?
So whatever you retain, what was that?
You know what's crazy? My last podcast, we said this exact same quote. That's nuts. Like, I shit you not, like everyone listening, I just filmed a podcast.
Bit of ESP.
Then, yeah, like for real. And I'd like to dive into that. You talk about purpose. Obviously, both of us are meeting at this one point in time and sharing these thoughts through magic on the internet.
Yeah.
And it is going to touch other people, and maybe their telencephalon's going to activate, and they'll notice their retention, attention, and what was that third part? Attention, retention, intention. That's so
your nervous system will make that, like, say you're like, you're tired and you're having a rest, and then all of a sudden some piques your curiosity, and you get alive and you get up and you're on the go all of a sudden. Like that, obviously when we have those choices that we got to make, I'm like, I don't know whether it's this, and then we decide to go with this thing, it's usually there's a deeper unconscious motive there, and we're usually not aware of it. But if we become really attuned to what that is, what's driving us, like our muscles and our nervous system, then we can start to understand, like, oh, there's a deeper reason for me doing these things. We only see the surface level, but when we go, the deeper we go into understanding our own self and our own ontology and our own kind of history as well, it's very, very empowering, because, you know, you can look at your upbringing. What did you perceive most missing as a child is what you have a high value to fulfill. So, for example, nurses, doctors, and carers perceive there was a lack of care in their life, so they have a high value in care. You know, judges, police, lawyers perceive there was a lack of justice or great injustice done by them, so they have a high value on justice. So for me, and what I do is, like, there was a lack of purpose, there was a lack of meaning, there was a lack of connection to something greater than yourself, and that became really intriguing to me as I got older, and it was something that was curiosity of mine. And that just, you know, unfolded over the years. It just unfolded as like learning more. And then you get to a point where you learn so much and you fill up your own cup. Then it's like, well, the only next way for me to learn is to actually teach, because the best way to learn is to teach. And so it's like, now I live my life as a gift where I learn and I get to share that with the other people around me, who I can serve and who I can help and who feel called to work with me, and who I know I can. You know, there's some people, you know, that you can't help, and some people that you can help. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
I agree, totally agree. I was in a similar position, lost, distracting myself with things that made me feel good, gaming, relationships, drugs, substances. So yeah, I get that. It's, I could have had the right person in front of me, but I wouldn't have been able to see it, I like what you were saying before about you can't change your past, but you can change your perspective on it. And I know for us, like, I'm an avid believer and studier of DeMartini, but like, I know it for a fact that, like, when I first started learning that stuff, and when I heard him talk about how it's just your perception, like, I felt slightly triggered first. And like, I'm fine now because I know it's true, right? Like, we're just biochemical beings, and, like, the perception really does just shape how you feel, and then that acts on your behaviors. But, there's people out there that really can't see past that, and they just are in that reactive, that, what does he say? He's got the executive center and the, like, when you're in your...
Oh, you got your amygdala.
Amygdala, that's it.
Animal brain, hindbrain.
Yeah. So a lot of people are in that, and they've got those experiences, and their worlds are run by that. And I know that's hard to hear. So what would you say to those people that are like, well, no, this thing happened, like, and it was bad, and it's...
Oh, okay. So I'd have to break it down, because I love talking about the brain. This is learning from some of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work as well. So I'm going to tie some of that in. And so the brain, like, is the sole governing organ of the human body, right? It has the most neural pathways, or the most neurons, so it has the most intelligence. So wherever there's the most neurons is the most intelligence. And so the brain has like three layers. You have the reptilian brain, which we share with reptiles. It's the oldest brain in evolution. And then, which is like the brain stem and part of the brain called the cerebellum. That's where our unconscious habits and our autopilot behaviors are stored. And they have the neurons in that part of the brain have 10 times or 100 times the amount of connections, because it's all to do with our motor control and our movement and coordination. And this is where you could say the unconscious mind is stored. And then you got the next layer of the brain. So it's like the base, the kind of the brain stem, and then the base of the brain. And then you have the next layer of the brain, which is the mammalian brain. This is where your limbic system is. This is where these emotions start to come up. And this is all to do with how we've evolved in nature for mammals to be like, kind of interdependent on one another, especially with the offspring and the young, because that's where we became then to be able to teach and pass on our knowledge. And like oxytocin and all these bonding chemicals came into play, because reptiles, when they evolved, they would actually eat their offspring if the young didn't run away. This is in a great book by Daniel Coleman called Emotional Intelligence. He talked about this. And so the next layer of the brain is the mammalian brain. This is where our emotions and our limbic system is this is what you would call the subconscious mind. And then you finally, which is the last layer of the brain, which is the neocortex. It looks kind of like a walnut. It's 40% of our mass brain total, and it's our thinking mind. And the neurons in that part of the brain, there's not as many connections and dendrites as there is as you go to the more primitive parts of the brain. So this is why someone can hear a bunch of sounds, words. It vibrates and tickles, some sensors in their ear, and then decodes it in their brain, and they can have an emotional reaction, right? It's because it activates these primitive parts of the brain, and it induces a sense of fight or flight, where you fear the loss of something you desire, reclaim, or you fear the gain of something you want to avoid and run away from. And so when we perceive, our perception of the world is actually our brain and our mind. You can say our mind, and the definition of the mind is the brain in action. Our mind is the interface between our environment and our physiology. For me and you could be seeing the exact same environment, but what's happening on a physiological level inside of our body will change based upon how we perceive our reality. And so if someone has a specific perception of reality that they've had their whole life, and they see it only from this one perspective, right? It's like, so you're sitting there, right, and you have this experience and you have a memory, you have an event happen in your life, and your brain takes in all this information through the five senses. You create a memory in that moment, and the higher the emotional peak, the more memorable that memory will be, because you take a snapshot, right? And then that snapshot then creates a memorized emotion. And then you have a similar experience in the external world, and that triggers the same emotional reaction. And the thing is, all the people around you also have those similar triggers and reactions, and they reinforce the idea that you're a victim of this circumstance. You're a victim of what's happening outside in the world. And then human beings are innately addicted to drama, and so we start talking about it. Yeah, they're wrong. No, they're right. And then we build up this neural network of this 3D reality that we see as light, and this pattern then continues to play out in our life. Pattern, this perception that we see, that we probably were taught by our parents and their parents and their parents. And so we have what I call this kind of like root cause. It's like the root cause of, and the foundation on which we build everything else upon, right? We build all these other layers on top of that kind of one knot of neural pathways of what we remember most growing up. Is usually one or two highly emotional charges when we're growing up that kind of shape us in our early childhood, and then also into our teens, and then continues with us into adulthood. Most people have 20, 30, 40, 50 years of this same story, whether it's I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I was rejected, I was neglected, I was abandoned, I was abused. All these stories that whatever it is unique to that individual, and then that's the kind of foundation, and then we start to build our reality on top of that, and it's this one perspective that we have. And so when we go back, we can actually rewire that perception, and we can see the truth, and we can see a full 360 degrees, as opposed to being like this. Now we can see the whole event. We're like, holy crap, I was receiving all this, and I got all this from it, and this is how this is the benefit, and this is the hidden blessing, and this is why, wow. And you start to really see that, and when you get it, and you shift on an emotional level, not just intellectually, oh, it made me a better person, made me stronger. That's kind of like rationalizing and trying to bypass actually the lesson, is when you get like this sense of like true gratitude. Gratitude is the greatest healer, and love is the greatest healer on the face of the earth. As when you get that, then your whole perception of your reality starts to change, because you're like, wow, there is something beyond my limited perception. You start to see that there is some sort of divine order, and you're like, whoa, this thing, I can't explain it, but it's there. You feel connected to it. You feel like everything that's happened to you was specifically designed for the evolution of your heart and soul.
Yeah, that's interesting as well, because the fact that we can even think about that as humans shows the evolution process. Like we would have had to get to this point of understanding for our own evolution. Like that's probably what's made us as humans like get to a point where we're conquering lands and things like that. But it makes me think anyway, like what is that deeper like why have we got the ability to do that? Like that means it's going to be some step process, right? Because we're going to keep going and going and going. So like, is there a high level of consciousness, which I think we can touch on?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Get it?
I think like the universe created itself to experience itself and to observe itself and look back at the stars and go, wow. Like, I think anyone who's like been camping or looked out under the stars, you're really just kind of like, that was like probably the fire and the stars were probably our original TV where we just stare off into space. And instead of now doing that with the stars, most people look at the TV screen and see pixels moving in rapid succession. But we used to look at the stars. That would be our old form of, oh, we're watching a movie tonight, kids, and you just sit under the stars and watch, and this is where we, if you look into like cosmology, we came from, stardust, basically. The planet was this big, boiling pot of, cosmic soup. And then the first single-celled organism was created. And then it's just evolved ever since then. And I believe in creating evolution. I believe there's a driving force, a kind of blueprint to the universe. And, God or the universe created itself to experience itself in every single form. But when we get attached to what it should look like or what it should be, we're separating ourselves from that force or that energy, and we end up becoming like this kind of like isolated little organism, like, no, I'm alone in this. And like, this is what I truly believe has been programmed into us to believe that. So we feel that disconnected and disempowered, because if you're disempowered in your life, then you're more willing to be dictated to how you should live it.
I agree. And oh man, that's a whole other thing about why are we being programmed? Is there an agenda? I don't know. Like, what's the benefit of us being programmed? We're easier to be controlled. Like, I don't know. Probably to some extent.
There's a few different ideas. Like, there's obviously like there's a whole rabbit hole of conspiracies of why that is. And
I feel like you have to say it's a conspiracy in case you get put on a bloody
that's right. That's right. Like, me and my friends call them real life stories because they keep coming true.
Yeah, no shit.
Or no, real life theories. Sorry, yeah. But I actually got caught in that rabbit hole for a period, and I realized it was just like I was on the other spectrum, like on watching the news. I was on the other polar end. So it's like watching the news, believing everything on the news you can become disconnected from your own personal power and your own, sense of self-governance and being self-led, because you're kind of controlled by emotions over here. And then same with the conspiracy kind of side of things. Like if you get caught up in that world, it can govern you emotionally and what you should be doing and what your true calling is. And because you can get very, pulled either way. But when you come to, to center and you become more balanced, you realize that both are a means to an end, and both are both sides of the story are actually there's an element of truth between all of it. And the more I become more in tune with myself, the more I realize that our collective story, our collective beliefs is what's tying in and creating this world at a higher level. And so I truly believe that evolution is inevitable. And what we're talking about now, these truths, these universal laws, these universal truths will start to be common knowledge in the future, because it's like, it can't not be. We can't not move towards the truth. And there's specific things that don't want people to know the truth and about the nature of who they truly are, the nature of their own divinity, the nature of their own power to create. There's, special interests that don't want that to happen because they've worked it out. And they're like, well, if other people work this out, then we won't be able to create the world the way they see it fit. But I think at a higher level, you can't have one side come in and push a story this way without there also being the opposite.
Yeah.
And then it's like this constant evolution that we're going from, narrative to narrative as we're evolving, we're pushing back against certain things. And this creates this kind of this, this staircase to evolution, you could say, where it's like, we're going one way, then we're getting, this way and then that way. And it's like, you can easily get caught up in the emotions of people are being programmed and all this, but it's what's driving, a certain group of people in the world right now to speak up and to share and that's creating the whole wave. And that's the next wave I see is of leaders and it's going to continue to evolve that way. And, the stories that we're talking about, the people we've learned from, maybe aren't going to resonate with the people aren't going to resonate with the people that we're destined to serve, and the people that we serve and then inspire, they're going to serve and inspire other people who our voice couldn't reach.
I had a similar thing. I've kind of always been like a rebel and not being, I hated being told what to do and still do really. But I went down, those paths, especially through COVID. I was just like, what the fuck's going on? But then I came to that same understanding that it kind of gave me a relaxing. It's like you literally can't have peace without war. That I was living in a world model for a long time that I wanted to infiltrate the new world order and take him down. And I was like, but for good to happen, there literally needs to be those bad people out there, the bad things happening. Just as there's all this bad stuff, there's all the good stuff happening. I think DeMartini talked about, or it was Joe Dispenza, I don't know, they talked about this event, during a 9/11 thing. 9/11, there was a massive spike in deaths. There's a data on it, there's an average of amount of deaths or criminal happenings, and at both ends of the spectrum, when there's large amounts of deaths or large amounts of grace happening in society, there was a dip in global crime or an increase in global crime.
Oh, yeah.
It was just so interesting. So when I think it was 9/11, he was referring.
I've heard this. I'm pretty sure I've heard this one. Yeah.
Yeah, 9/11, there was so many deaths, but then the following months overall was dipped much below average in crime rates and overall deaths. And it's there is a balance. Even on a macro level, if you release all social constructs and emotions about how you feel about that, overall you literally can't have one without the other. It's an interesting point of view.
Well, yeah, 100%, man. You're completely right. Because during COVID, I went to an event, and there was people, rallying in the streets and coming together. And I was one of those people, and there was one stage where there was 50,000 people in the middle of the city in Perth, Western Australia. And I took my sister there, my nieces came. We were, we wanted to protect the future for future generations, because what we were seeing rolled out, people were just blindly just lining up for whatever whatever experiment was, whatever experiment was next.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, we wanted to stand up against that and stand for reason, and to stand for, our own ability to choose. And I stood up on, stage in front of about 3,000 to 5,000 people. And I was in complete awe because of the fact that never have I ever seen this many people come together other than like a concert or a football match. Like there was all these people in unison. And the funny thing was, across Australia and the world, right? This was when the truckers in Canada were showing up to Parliament, and they were putting, stopping, and then there was videos of that weekend, people in Parliament where there was millions of people on Parliament, and then the next week, Russia and Ukraine was all over the news, and
we're going to
magically, miraculously stopped, and I was blown away because I truly believe we made an impact, because they were like, whoa, these people are coming together. This is drawing more people together than it is. And then boom, they shoved that story and swept it under the rug.
Yeah, need something.
And now it's been about this random war over in Europe. And come back to your question, or to what you were speaking about, is like, we forget how our actions and how we affect this world at large, because it's like the butterfly flaps its wings in a desert in the Sahara or in Africa, and creates a monsoon in Peru. It's like that happens in our life. And a little analogy that I would share is like, imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you walk down the street and you smiled at someone, and that person smiled at someone, and that was just as contagious as COVID. And by the time you went out the next day for a walk, that smile had traveled around the world, come back to you, and someone smiled at you walking down the street. Like, we don't know how far our actions and our things go. Like, we just don't know what impact we have.
Well, we can't comprehend it anyway.
Having like, what?
We can't comprehend it anyway. We
can't comprehend it. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's like it's like inconceivable, and it's like, wow. It's like, and so this here gives me the courage and also the inspiration to go, well, why not show up? Why not share? Why not share your vision with the world of what life could be like, if in terms of how you perceive the most highest expression of your own kind of garden of Eden, your own heaven on earth, like, and really expanding that. And that's part of my life's work, is to share that and to continue to refine. Like I have a whole, like, almost if you were giving the world as a game on Sims, and you could create like your own, you remember that game in Sims? And you could create your own version of the world. Like, what would you make it look like? What would what would you do? What would you teach? What would it be like? And so I think we all have that kind of inner vision inside of us, buried somewhere, and our own version of that. And our own version of that can help shape the future. And then that to me is like having a long-term vision. Being a visionary, it helps you see with clarity from the chaos in our world that's going on in short term, because having a long-term vision is something I learned from a mentor, is so important, because the masses are caught up in quick fix, quick buck, quick piece of cake, quick solution, a Band-Aid, full of bullet wound, a pill for every ill. And when you can start to see a long-term vision, those with a vision flourish, and those without a vision perish. And that's, in the Bible, that's been wisdom channeled from God. And it's so true. So it happens in relationships. If you're in a relationship and you don't have a vision together, like the drama and the petty nonsense and the you didn't do that, you did this, and from the past is just going to cloud that the potential of that relation to flourish. And it's the same within a business. If you're in a business and you don't have that long-term vision that's connected to your heart, and not just like, oh, I want to help X amount of people, and it's just some mundane, kind of like something surface level that like it sounds good to your brain, but it's like it doesn't move you on a deep level, then, again, business challenges are going to come up, and it's going to be, doubt and insecurity and questioning yourself, and, problem after problem, because of the fact that that long-term vision isn't there. And it's just like a human being will never outgrow their vision. So if you're plateaued in your life right now, in any area, it's actually life giving you feedback. Life is constantly giving us feedback through our relationships, through our physical, our physical body is giving us feedback.
Yeah.
To what imbalances we have within our mind. And if we see this feedback and we know how to interpret it, right, based upon not what the outside world says, but based upon our unique specific purpose and how that is actually showing us and revealing to us more of who we truly are and what we're here to do and why we're here, then we become masters of life, and we start to see like, wow, like we see the universal laws and principles laying out in front of us, and we become a true, authentic leader. I believe is like, that's where you are in tune, and you're not just you're learning from life. You're learning from life itself. You're a student of life, and that's what inspires me every day to wake up and continue to like on this path, because it's challenging at times, for sure. Anyone who's gone out and created their own business, who's followed that entrepreneurial spark, who's created their own business, who's done something different in the world, gone against the grain, gone against what their family normally do, it's definitely going to challenge you. And it's like, what a brilliant container of growth it is, because
that's a life swap.
I would rather feel alive, having to choose courage than, dimming my light, trying to play it safe.
Yeah. Well, what would you, just because I get the content you're talking about, what's some of the symptoms that people can exhibit when they're not living a life of purpose? Because that's like you said, life is constantly giving you feedback. So like, I think if everyone's listening, this is probably the most important mindset to have, because then you can, it's a macro belief that everything that you experience is just feedback. And instead of looking at it immediately as like, oh, fuck, I'm really bad at this, it's like you can look at it as feedback. So what are some of the, like, you work with a lot of people now trying to align their soul, find their purpose so they can live their life and make a business out of it? Is that what you're saying? That's kind of what you help people do. What are some of the symptoms that I have?
Your purpose, and really get defined on what that looks like and what your unique vision is in the world, like something that's connected to your heart. It's usually when you can see how your past has been governing your present, you can then, like I said, connect the dots of the past, you can then see the future. So first off is dissolving all those stories and removing all the junk, and then planting the seeds of inspiration, and then watering those seeds by breaking that vision down into more smaller bite-sized, actionable, tangible, and practical, implementable steps. And so if that requires, and I've noticed a lot of people, they want to, have the ability to, of autonomy, to not be tied to a boss, not be tied to someone else's watch and clock, to be able to directly serve and inspire and help other people. And I think that's a true gift that we have with this, this technology that's been available to us over the years, and it's becoming more and more possible. And if you're authentic and you have something that truly serves, that you can't wait to give to people, then people will want to be around, and people want to, invest and be a part of what you're creating and part of what you're doing. Because if you go to like a, establishment and the person's like, how you going? They're all sad about it, versus someone's like, hey, how can I help you today? And they're smiling, they're inspired, like you feel different about, what you're going to do in that establishment. And you can sense when someone's inspired by life, you can sense that within them, and you become like I said, like a magnet. And so I truly believe that every single human being has like a challenge that they've overcome in their life, that they can then shine the light and the torch for other people who are walking through the dark. And that's what creates this greater sense of fulfillment, because fulfillment comes from doing what we love by inspiring others and encouraging others to do what they love. And if you can find a way to build a business around that, I believe you've mastered the game in terms of your own sense of what you're here, what your objective is, and your mission here is when it comes to business and to finances is finding what you truly love and making something impactful to serve other people. So when it comes to that feedback, like for example, I get feedback from family members. I've had feedback from family members where I thought, oh, that was, they're telling me to do this or telling me to be like that or doing a certain thing. And it was like I've had some some stuff would derail the person who didn't have this awareness. It would completely disrail them off their path. But I realized the more someone doubts you, or the more someone questions you, it's like, especially someone close to you, it's almost like if they're sharing from a point of view of like what everyone else thinks, or what about is everyone else going to think? What about this? Everyone else thinks that. It's actually an indication that if someone's going, hey, well, not everyone can do this, or hey, not everyone can do that, that's actually feedback to let you know you're on the right track. So whenever you hear the words everyone else, that's brainwashing like at play right there. That's so everyone else doesn't do this, everyone else does that. So whenever I hear like negative feedback, if it's from someone that is living a life that I don't want to aspire to, like let's say they're still watching the news and they're still, living a life where it's dictated to them as opposed to those dictating their own life, don't have any less. It doesn't mean I don't love them or appreciate them. It means when I hear that, it's also, I'm like, oh, thank you for the message. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the reminder that I'm on the right track. And so if we can see those conversations and see those experiences and be able to decode them and go, okay, this is actually good feedback. And even for example, within your body, like for years I had a sore right hip, and hips mean to thrust forward in life. And I was kind of just coasting, and it wasn't until I finally like made that push and stepped out on the edge into all that I knew I could be. My hip was no matter amount of stretching or self massage or even massages in general could fix it. And then as I was starting my business, me and my good friend, we had a retreat center and it burned down. 12 months after us setting up this 20-bedroom retreat center on 52 acres in the Perth Hills, and it burned down. And then I was like, damn, like, what's the lesson here? I was like, all right, well, I'm alive. I've got a fresh start. I've got a blank canvas. I can create anything and do anything. What does the world most need that I would love to share? And then I had these random 5, I was in my friend's kitchen at the time, had these random 5 notepads that I just grabbed at random out of a stack of 20, and I started flicking through them. I'm like, wow, like everything I've been learning over the last 7 or 8 years is around purpose, because I was looking through the lens of what is purpose, what is my purpose, and it was like the thing I perceived as most missing. So I started to, fill that up to my knowledge base, and had these experiences and these lessons that kind of taught me about it at a deep level. And when the retreat center burned down, it was like time to show up and step up and do this in an online capacity. And as I was doing this, I had my right elbow started to play out. My hips stopped hurting, and my right elbow started to play out. Joints is all to do with flexibility, and also elbows to do with change of direction. So I was completely changing direction. It was feedback to let me know that I was on the right track again. And so the challenge is we separate ourselves from the physical. We separate ourselves. Our mind is very much in this paradigm of humanity. Our mind is very much separate from everything else in the world. We see everything else. Our physical body is just like, it has its own, thing. We'll outsource that to the doctors. And so we give away our power to doctors, giving us a pill for every ill, and it's destroying our bodies. Give away our power to media and movies and the news, and it's destroying our minds. We give away our power to, you know, tell financial institutions what we're worth and what we're here to do, and it ends up destroying our soul. So we've got so many different things challenging us, but it's the ultimate test. I feel like we've been brought here to test how much we can connect with the part of us that isn't physical, the part of us that is infinite, immortal, and universal. And the more we're in tune with that, the more we become self-led, self-governed, inspired individuals and self-driven. And these are the types of people that we look up to. Again, it's like these are the type. It's not because of what they've done in the world. What they've done in the world is a result of them listening to their inner whisper of the calling of their heart and soul, that purpose. And continuously, it's like, what are all wealthy, you know, influential history makers, people who have ever made a difference? What do they all have in common?
History, mate. What? Yeah, doing what
market history,
going against the status quo.
Anyone, every billionaire, every millionaire, every individual, who's made a difference, left a mark in history, what do they all have in common?
They went against the grain. They did when.
Yeah, but why? How did they go against the grain? What gave them the strength and the courage to go against that grain?
Yeah, their vision they had in their head that no one else could see.
Right. They all had a clear purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Your purpose is like the essence of who you are. The vision is
made a dent in the universe.
The image of what that looks like in the world. And they had that so clear within them that nothing in the outside world could deter them from that. And they were so certain, like, let's use an example of the Wright brothers. They were like, we're going to create a flying device and we didn't give a shit what anyone else says or does.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I mean? And now we have like Boeing 737s flying through the sky, like tons and tons of steel because these two brothers, or I think it was two, don't quote me on it, but the fact is they had a clear purpose and vision that they were not willing to let anything else tell them otherwise. And they just went for it. And they just went for it no matter what, anything that happened in the external world. They were doubted, they were slandered, they were ridiculed, they were ostracized, but they were like, I have a seed of an idea. Steve Jobs. I have this idea of a smartphone. It's in the metaphysical realm. And so people have all these ideas, right? There's someone right now having an idea on the planet that's created the next $1 billion, industry or company. And they're having that idea, and they're going to work in the next 3 to 10 years to make that probably happen. But it's existing in the metaphysical, and then the first place of creation is putting pen to paper. And so when you put pen to paper and you let that evolve and you refine it over time, and you continue to engage with that creation in the form of that's the first place we formalize it, is from the mind, and then putting it into the physical realm is writing it on paper. That's the first place of creation. Every single thing other than a rock and a tree existed as a thought in someone's mind, and the first place it existed after a thought was on paper. And so, there's a lot of power in writing down what you believe your purpose to be and continuing to refine it and reflect on it and look at how your actions, what's driving your actions and your choices on a daily basis. Where is it really coming from?
Yeah.
And I think you can start to reveal to yourself as well. And I have a whole course on this where I go deep into this, and it challenges people to think for themselves for the very first time in their life, because most people are just living reactively to the external world, and we haven't been taught to think actively. We've been taught to think passively. As soon as we're old to walk and talk, we're told to sit down and shut up, and we copy some notes out of a notepad or a part of history, and we write it in the book, and those are the answers, and those you can memorize, and the most information is the one that passes the most with the highest grade. But true introspection there is no right or wrong answer. There's only you peeling back the kind of layers and getting to what's true for you. And our heart and our sense of love and gratitude is our compass. Anytime you feel that sense of inspiration, anytime you feel that sense of like connectedness, there's life giving you feedback then there's a very important distinction between feeling that true sense of equanimity, you could say, or feeling infatuated and feeling this impulse and feeling this sense of like craving of desire. There's a difference between those two things, right? One's is like about animal nature again, and it's a wanting, it's a yearning, it's a needing, right? Anytime we need something, we're signaling to the universe that we don't have it. So the universe is going to give us more of that, because that becomes our emotional frequency and vibration that's entangling and collaborating with the quantum particles around us to bring about what we think and feel about.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly in a want.
That's why you need your purpose, say.
We're just signaling to the universe, this thing is outside of us. But if we start to appreciate the thing that we most want in our life, is seeing it already present in our life and seeing where it's already present in our life and detaching from the form that we want it to be in, we start to realize that we're already creating it and it's already being drawn into our life right now as we speak.
Yeah. And what's some actionable and implementable things that people can do to start to take their power back? Because a lot of it, like you're saying before, you get disempowered, you'll be told what to think and feel, you'll be told what you learn. So what's something actionable that people can take? Because obviously, like teaching
with me, we can do do my course. That would probably be the best thing, because I know that sitting down and actually going deep is going to get the greatest results. Because what I've created, I truly believe, is so powerful, potent, and profound. Like the people that come through that 2 years later are even like thanking me still to this day. And it's everything I learned over 7 or 8 years. And it's what I wish I had when I first started this journey of investing, over 100,000 in my personal growth and development. Like if I had this one thing, like it would have changed my whole path. And that's what I say, like my 7-year journey into a 2-3 month process.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's just compacted, like it's like quantum leaping in your mind, like it's compressing time. Yeah. It's like the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z. Anyone watches Dragon Ball Z. But that's obviously, high level, 15 minutes a day, 2 hours a week of like dedicated inner work. But if you want something practical that you can implement now, this is the 3-step process that I take people through and help them really get clear. Is step number 1 is like remove the stories, remove the limitations. And as you can symbolize that with the minus or the subtraction sign. So you really want to do this practically is look at the top 5 challenges, the most persistent and the most difficult in your perception, the most difficult challenges that you're facing in your life right now. Write down these 5 challenges. And then next to each one of those challenges, you're going to write the 20 benefits of those challenges in your life. And what this is going to do is when we have a persistent challenge in our life, we usually have a story or a narrative or a loop around it. All right. And it gets stored in that subconscious part of the brain, or it's in our subconscious mind, but this part where it's stored is in the amygdala. And it creates this, the fight or flight nervous system is activated when we think about it, because we want to avoid it. So the problem is here in our subconscious mind. Here's our stream of consciousness. Anytime we think of it, we're like, that thing that I haven't figured out yet. I need to avoid. I need to go and scroll on TikTok.
Yeah.
Or, that thing I haven't avoided. I need to go and drink some alcohol or gamble or do this thing. So there's this avoidant kind of like in an animal nature where it's trying to run away from that thought, belief, idea, whatever it is. And so by actually first identifying that challenge, then asking, what is the benefit of this? It's now coming from the subconscious mind, and we're starting to bring it towards the conscious mind, and we're starting to focus on not only the problem, but we're focusing on the solution by asking, what is the benefit? And it creates more blood, energy, and glucose to the forefront of the brain, the creative center of the brain. And we're starting to see that problem in creative ways and creative insights start to come to us. And intuition starts to be revealed to us. And we have these realizations. And what happens is we start to then again, instead of it seeing it from this way, we start to see the full picture. And that resistance that we had in that kind of where our frontal lobe would shut down because we'd think of that, now it's opened up and we're able to see that problem as an opportunity now to actually evolve and to grow. And so if you do that with your top 5 challenges that are taking up space in your mind and you write out all the benefit, you're going to have this surge of inspiration and clarity and wisdom and like insight, profoundness. And it seems a little bit counterintuitive to what's, taught out there in the personal development space, because I was just being positive about it. But if you have that there and that's in your subconscious mind, you're just trying to think positive. It's just suppressing it. It's just burying it, and it's just trying to avoid it. And it's probably the most destructive advice out there, because it's going to then create this. It's going to create this fracture in your own psyche, and the more you fracture your psyche, the more that is going to govern your life and govern you emotionally. And you've got to swing from one end to the other, where you feel this pain, this challenge come up, and you're like, oh no, why me, why me, why me? And anytime anything bad happens to you, or a challenge comes up in your life, you're like, why does life do this to me? What's the question most people ask themselves? Why me? What's wrong with me? And they then have a clear reason why, and they go through a catalog in their mind of where, mommy did this, daddy did that, teacher did this, bully did that. And we have this kind of like set of memories that we kind of just catalog, and it becomes habitual and automatic. And so that's step number 1, is removing the noise. And so that will help you diffuse all those heightened states of emotion that are from fear and desire. And it'll start to calm those down, and that noise will start to calm down. And you start to see things from a different perspective. So step number 2 then is what I would call identify and define your purpose. And so in a simple way, I have like this, each step I teach is a 2-week process, but simplify it. And for those who want some, really good value, is I look at this as an addition sign. And what you want to do is, in this inspired state, once you've removed and you're in a more inspired state, is then write down what it is you'd love your life to look like. And just write down a paragraph of what is the thing that most inspires you and most you feel like you're here to do, and you feel most called, and allow yourself to think as big as bold as you want. So create a long-term vision. And this, my biggest suggestion in this step number 2 is, how many times have people written down goals, written down visions, written down their purpose, written down something that is meaningful to them, but they have it all scattered in these different notepads and different documents on their computer, and it's all over the place. Is to amalgamate and have one document that you come back to and consistently refine over the duration of your life. And that is the most, like you would, if you read over notepads and journals, like I've read over things, I'm like, whoa, damn, I said that, like that is deep, that is profound. And it's like, I realize there's moments where I'm most connected to, to my divinity, connected to God and the universe, connected to the universe. And those, I'm drawing in, those wise, timeless, ageless, infinite, immortal parts of myself it's being revealed to me. And then I get caught up in life over here. And then I come back to it. And it's still that same persistent truth and wisdom coming through. And so if you have that document, then you can start to make that something you read on a daily basis, that you connect to on a daily basis, that if it no longer inspires you, refine it and continue to hone it and make it more congruent and aligned to who you are and your true expression of potential in this world. And that's step number 2, right? Is planting the flowers, planting the seeds of inspiration, and really, really creating a stream of consciousness that you can come back to, that's authentic and inspiring to you. And so that would be step number 2 in simple terms. And then step number 3 in simple terms, which is what I teach in my coaching, is reverse engineering it and breaking it down and map it out. So each step is identify and dissolve the subconscious limitations, and dissolve them. Then the step number 2 is to define your purpose. This is what I call the purpose activation blueprint. And then the final step is the master plan and pathway processes, where you plan it out and you break it down into smaller, actionable, bite-sized chunks. So step number 1, we're all in our hind brain, our animalistic brain, where we're reacting to our life and we're, doubting ourselves, caught up on our emotions. Step number 1, you then ask questions in the frontal lobe. Questions open up the mind, and you start to create all this neural activity in the forebrain. You start to see creative insights, creative solutions. You start to see everything that's happening as a blessing and as part, as fuel, as inspirational fuel. And then from there, that's where you can then create what it is that's truly meaningful and aspiring to you, and plant those flowers. And that's right brain. That's big vision. That's non-linear. That's the thing connected to your heart. And then from there is the left brain, the analytical, detailed, logical, structured side, where you're breaking things down in using the masculine hemisphere of the brain, integrating those 2 hemispheres of the brain by breaking it down and then creating smaller chunks and smaller goals, and linking any challenge to your on your path through that purpose and what you're bringing about and what you'd love to create in the world. And so those 3 steps, anytime I do this in terms of if I want to have like breakthrough or plateau or breakthrough where I'm at in life, business, in my health, so it's like I come back to myself. It's never in watching another YouTube video or watching another podcast. It's, how many times have we heard steps or things to do, actionable pieces on a podcast, we don't do anything with it. That's why it's so important to invest in yourself, and why I invest in myself is because those who pay attention. And if I pay for something, I'm going to be implementing that information. I'm paying for my own. It's like, all right, I'm going to put this money down, and now I know I'm going to put in the work to implement this no matter what. Yeah. And it's like, you don't have to rely on that, but it's also something I've learned when I'm working with clients is like those who invest and pay attention, putting the work. If I had my stuff out there for free, no one would do anything with it. Yeah, and because it's actually requires a lot of challenging. It requires you to really challenge and push yourself as an individual. And to do that, you need to be invested in your growth. And if you're not invested in your growth, you're invested in your decay. And that's why our bad habits come up. And those are like, we're making long-term investments that probably aren't, have a return on investment on our soul.
I love
that. They have a return on investment on short-term gratification and pleasure. But in the long term, that, nothing of our 5 senses can satisfy our soul.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome, man. I'll wrap it up now, coming to an end, but like, that's really awesome.
Yeah, going all day.
I know, that's what I mean. We're going to do a part 2, but just to recap, like, everyone listening, that was such a deep conversation. I know, like, this is what I love. Like, it's all around me, like you can see it in my books, the knowledge, deep philosophy. So like, and that's why I do this. And so yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, those are really powerful 3 actionable steps that people can take. We also touched a lot on, the neurobiology, neuroscience of purpose, which is cool because I don't think you can't like really Google it. This is like a culmination of all the education you had. And yeah, big detail science on emotions and how we store it. So that was really good, man. There's definitely lots of bite-sized pieces here that I'll be able to snip up, and everyone listening will probably have mind-blowing moments. And yeah, so it was really cool, man. Before we finish up, where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Brett Dobreskovic, Brett, and there's a link there to I give away a couple of purpose activation calls a week, and I'm back in the moment. By the time you go there, you might see something different around how to turn your purpose into profitable, impactful, and sustainable business. Because I'm feeling called to serve other people in that realm, because it's something that I've had the blessing of being able to do with working with people. Is I feel like, wow, I'm so blessed to be able to work with people and help people that I want to show other people how they can do the same thing around their own purpose. And so if you, find me on the gram at Brett Dobreskovic. There's a free activation call I do 3 a week. And so if you're interested, you can always reach out to me there. And these are like not a sales pitch. I just give unapologetically to my people, to people who resonate with me, and there's a small percentage of people go, hey man, I want to work with you. I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to, find out more about myself, and they just resonate. And so that's how, in a nutshell, if you are interested in someone who's wanting to be rewarded financially for their purposes, that's how you, the wisest way to show up is to give up front, give a lot of free value, give with all your heart and soul, and then also have a model and a business model that allows you to then enroll people who want to work with you on a long-term basis.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, wealth of knowledge, man. And any departing messages for the listeners? Or have we touched it all? Have to be part 2.
I got one thing that my mentor he's told me for a very long time, and it just came through, and it was something that really helped me a lot. And it was, when you're inwardly fluent, you're outwardly influential, but when you're inwardly lost, you're outwardly influenced.
Wow, that's awesome. Inwardly fluent, outwardly influential, inwardly lost, outwardly influenced.
Yeah, outwardly influenced.
That's awesome.
Another thing.
I never heard that. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. That's true.
Yeah.
That's why we've got to be empowered.
So I just want to thank you as well, Corey. It's been an absolute pleasure jumping on and chatting with you, mate.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
It was the very, very inspiring chat.
Yeah, no, I love it. I could do this, like, same with you. I could do this forever. Hopefully next time I've got an in-person studio, we can do a part 2 and chill after as well.
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, brother. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate the chat. Have a good one.
Welcome, bro.